So this is going to be one of the biggest excuses in the gardening world, and that is going to be not having a green thumb. People use that excuse in order to justify killing their plants. They go get a plant, the plant dies. Well, they didn't have a green thumb, and that's the reason why their plant died. Well, in today's episode, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know in order to get a green thumb, and it's not as hard as you think. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, check this out. It doesn't really matter what color your thumb is. It is not about the color of your thumb. It is about you. It took me many years to understand this, but once I figured it out, I was able to grow everything. And you know what that is? I'm gonna make it fast and furious today. And that is, you have to treat your plants like you do your pets or your kids. The minute you start looking at your plant like you do your pets or your kids, you are going to get a green thumb automatically. Most people who buy plants, they don't view plants as living beings. They view plants as a thing. Furniture, no different than furniture. And that is the main reason why your plants are dying. It is not because you have a green thumb or you don't have a green thumb. It's because you're not taking care of your plants. I live in the desert. Right now, this bamboo plant right here, if I don't water it, I would say for half a day, it's dead that quickly. So if you come to my nursery and you buy this plant right here, you take it home, you water it that morning, and then by the time you come back from work, school, or whatever, if you didn't water that plant in the middle of the day, your plant is cooked like that. And guess what? The color of your thumb didn't have anything to do with that. So in order to get a green thumb in gardening, one of the main things you need to understand about plants is plants need care, just like your kids and just like your pets. So if you're gonna go and get yourself a plant, it's a commitment, a lifetime commitment. Especially if you are getting a fruit tree. Guava plants can live for decades. So if you're gonna get yourself one, for one, you need to put her in the ground to give your plant the best chances of survivability. But you have to keep in mind, if you're gonna buy one, it's going to live for a long time, probably longer than you will. But another thing about this plant is you need to water it. It doesn't matter what color your thumb is, if you don't water this plant, in my area right now, if it goes dry for 1 hour, this plant is dead. The color of your thumb doesn't really make a difference whether this plant will live or not. This plant right here has a very shallow fibrous root system. It's usually from areas where it rains almost daily. The root system of this plant does not need to drink every bit of water from the soil, where it's originally from. Well, here in the desert, it's a different story. Here in the desert, it doesn't rain daily. It's extremely hot, and it's also not as humid as in a tropical environment. In my area, this is one of the only plants that you can actually keep alive as long as you keep the soil wet, to allow the plant to drink water easier. Not because this is a heavy drinker or this plant drinks a lot of water, simply because of the type of root system of this plant. It needs to be wet, especially in extreme hot areas, like in my area, in the desert. If this plant goes moist, I'm not talking about fully dry, in the sun within 1 hour to 2 hours, this plant is dead. And this one happens to be the #1 plant people kill in my area. But you see, I tell that to people who come to my nursery. I tell them everything they need to know in order to be successful. So it doesn't really matter what the color of your thumb is. I will tell you everything you need to know in order to keep your plants alive. And as long as you follow my directions, you are going to be successful. If you don't have the right information to take care of your plant, most people are going to kill them. But like I said earlier, the one secret to keep your plants alive is you have to view your plants as living beings. If you get a pet, you're not going to leave your pet in the sun without water. Because if you do, well, what's going to happen? It's going to die. Most plants rely on you 100% for sustainment, especially when they are in a container. They do not become self-reliant until they are fully rooted in the ground, like this date palm over here. This plant right here can go a very long time without water, but it has been in the ground for several years, and that's the reason why it's able to do so, because its root system is deep in the ground. But if you go to a nursery and you buy yourself a date palm like this one right here, and you leave it in the sun and you don't water it for several days, what do you think is going to happen? Your plant is going to die. And when your plant is dead, you cannot blame the color of your thumb on your plant dying. It is your fault because you didn't water your plant. Simple as that. I'll be honest with you. It is not your fault for thinking that way. It is the society that we live in's fault. Why do I say that? Because everything around us is money. It's based on money. Everybody wants to make money. Everybody wants to take advantage of somebody else. And plants are no exception. And this is the reason why most people view plants as an item, as furniture. They don't view plants as a living being. Because when you go to the store, you just see the plant sitting there with a price tag, and you relate that with anything else that's at that store that is not alive. And that's the reason why most people don't think of plants as living beings. But I can tell you, as you start growing plants and surround yourself with plants, plants have a special energy that will actually change the way you view the world. But in order for that energy to affect you internally and externally, you need to hang out with plants for a little while. For some people that happens sooner. For others, it takes a little while. For me, it took about, I would say, 3 to 4 years before I actually started thinking differently, before I started viewing plants as living beings. And that was the minute that I actually was able to get a green thumb. You see, for most of my plants here at the nursery, or even my plants in the ground, I don't really do much to keep them alive. But I give them the most vital thing they need in order to survive, and that is water. Water is going to be the #1 source your plants need in order to stay alive. And that is the #1 thing people actually miss when they get new plants. They get stuck on the magic juices and the special soils and everything else, and they forget about the most vital thing plants need in order to stay alive, and that is water. Most people do not understand, especially in areas with extreme climate, with an extreme climate like mine, how fast plants will actually die without water. I had a customer come in today, and he came from another nursery, one of the bigger nurseries in my area, and he actually took notes. He watched my videos, and he came to my nursery to ask me the same questions in person. And he was amazed by the answers that he got at other nurseries. He was asking them how often and how long to water their plants. New plants in containers. And the answer that he got at this one nursery was, you need to water your plant 3 times a week. Anybody that tells you how often to water your plants, most likely 99% of the time, do not know how to grow plants. You have to understand, most of the nurseries around us, they actually buy plants wholesale and resell them to you. Most nurseries do not grow their own plants. They're bought. Most nurseries just buy and resell. And the people telling you all these tips usually just started working at that nursery most likely that week. And this is the reason why there is so much misinformation online. Because a lot of those people working at these nurseries, they do not spend enough time with plants to actually understand how to grow plants. They don't grow their own plants. All they do is just buy and resell. So what's my take on a green thumb? Like I said earlier, it doesn't really matter what color your thumb is. As long as you take care of your plants like you do yourself, like you do your pets, like you do your kids, you are going to be successful. Your plants are not going to die. You have to understand, most plants will die very quickly, especially when they are in containers. And most plants normally take about a year to root themselves in the ground fully before they can actually start taking care of themselves. So until then, you have to water your plants. Don't worry about the fertilizers. Don't worry about the special soils. Don't worry about all the fungi, all this crazy stuff you see online people are trying to sell you. Just forget about all of that. And just remember, keep it simple. All you need is water. If you really want to get into all the specifics, just water your plants, learn, and at least your plants are going to grow, they're going to live, and you're not going to kill them. And then blame the color of your thumb for your plant dying. It doesn't really matter what type of plant I grow. It doesn't matter if I actually seen it before, if I have any experience with it or not. The most basic requirement for all plants, it's always going to be water. And guess what? The only time that I kill my plants nowadays at my nursery is because they didn't get water. You don't need a PhD in master gardening to be able to grow plants. I don't know how many master gardeners I have seen walk through my gates and act like they know everything and try to teach me stuff. But yet, they miss the most basic requirement, and that is always water. If you're one of those master gardeners, don't take offense. It's just, it's, it's just how it is. Just water your plants. Gardening is very simple, but people make it complicated because there's always going to be somebody out there who's going to make money out of that. As always, guys, if you like my video, don't forget to like it. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? And I will see you next time.